Welcome to A Shock in the Dark, an audio journal of a haunting. This is episode 6.
Sorry I haven't recorded a bit, but a lot has gone on. I got my second shot, waited a week until I was basically immune, and made the big decision. Took time off from work, and now I'm at my parents' house. By the way, it's Sunday, April 25th, 2021, 9:55 p.m. I'm standing in a parking lot for a grocery store. I don't know, maybe a couple of miles from where my parents live. For such a small town, it sure is busy around here. A lot of traffic and stuff. I apologize. But why am I here? That's the big question. Well, the main reason is I haven't seen my parents in a long time because of the pandemic. And, not being able to travel. But there was a second reason. I started thinking about all the stuff that happened to me when I was a kid, and in general, that stuff that happened around the house when I was a kid. And I started thinking that maybe my parents have a different recollection of things than I do. Maybe they aren't even aware of the shadow people that used to torment me. Because maybe something that was a huge life-changing event for me was just a passing phase or a non-event to them. So last night I put my telephone that I'm recording on now on the table inconspicuously, and they were completely unaware that I had my recorder app on. And I asked my mom and dad, mainly mom, what they remember about the creepy stuff that happened all those years ago. And I guess you could judge for yourself on how close or how far apart our recollections are. In this recording, I have to say I actually learned a couple of things that I never knew. And one important editor's note before I play you any of this: I have edited it a tiny bit, but only for time and to get rid of, unrelated chatter, and if there was any personal identifying information to an innocent party, try to get rid of that as well. But no important information whatsoever. If it bolstered my case or weakened it, none of that stuff was taken out. So, just to set the scene a little bit, we were just finishing up dinner. My phone is on the table. I hit the button on the recording app secretly. And here's that recording. Me talking to my parents around the dinner table. I apologize in advance for the quality of the recording. Do you remember what I saw when I was a kid?
Are you talking about the black flat? I'm gonna call them paper people.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
What do you remember about that?
That they came out of the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the main thing I do remember, you talking about them.
Do you remember me first telling you about them or anything?
Well, I would think you were 10 or 11, but I don't know if you were that old, were you?
I was not that old, because it was in our old house before Cindy was born.
I remember that Cindy also saw them.
Do you remember where we were?
We must have been in the kitchen.
Yes. We were in the
Because
kitchen.
we always talked when we would sit around the table in the kitchen.
But we were playing Uno. And Cindy was laughing, and then she wasn't.
Cindy needs to tell you again about that. I wonder if she remembers, because she was quite small.
In the window.
Like, what is the kind of paper that kids did crafts with?
Construction?
Yeah, it was like they were made out of construction paper, was my impression of what y'all said.
Well, it wasn't, though, because they weren't flat. You know, they were full dimensional.
See, I thought they were flat, but they weren't.
No. They were just outlines. You have no features. You couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
But also, do you remember another thing that I saw?
Yes. And I particularly remember that because I somehow associate it with the fact that I was laying in the bed one night. I had been awakened, and I thought that somebody had come in from the outside through the kitchen door and down the hall, and I could hear this big heartbeat, and he came down the hall, and when he got to the bedroom, he was dressed very old-fashioned and in black clothes, and had this hat on that was kind of the main part of it looked like it was flattened down. And his pants kind of puffed out, and like his pants went down into maybe boots or something, and he had a jacket on, and I knew, and he was a little stout, and I knew that if he came, my heart was beating so hard that if he actually came and touched me, this is what I thought at the time, that I would be dead.
Because if the person you saw had been just like a black outline person, that thing has a name.
Well, don't say the name. It's kind of creepy.
It's basically like one of those black shadow figure type people, but it has a hat on. It's called the Hat Man.
Oh.
But let me tell you, the horse that would come down the hallway and turn around and go back and then come back down, that was all white.
Well, when I was a kid, I woke up and I saw this man, and everything was white about him. White. His clothes, he was just outlined in black light. He was standing there at the end of my bed looking at me. And I can remember just screaming. But that is my first, what I would have called an encounter, and it could have just been a dream.
The way I described the horseman right up and down the hall is that it's like the light that comes from the moon.
You know what that reminds me of? Is the story Cindy told when we were living in Grandma's house. And her bedroom was right next to ours. And she awoke to seeing a man standing at the door between the two bedrooms. And he had a glow. He had a glow to him. And it scared her so badly. And she didn't know what to do, but she was screaming. And then she said, I had to get to your bedroom, and I finally just ran right through him.
She did. Because she's better than me, because I would not get up with those shadow people were walking around my room.
And later, we were just looking through old pictures, and we came across a picture of her great-great-grandfather.
She said,
yeah, she said, that's him.
She recognized him.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I didn't know about that one.
You did? I've come to I don't know, don't have an explanation about ghosts, but I try not to dwell on that. I used to think a lot about it because of different little experiences, and it is fun to tell ghost stories. And I know that your things that happened with you were significant, and that Cindy kind of would have backed that up. But I don't like to dwell on that.
Okay, we don't have to.
It's kind of,
I just didn't know if you remembered what had happened or what my story was. That's
I
all.
can remember Jack waking up and speaking a quite a lengthy conversation in some kind of foreign language we never have heard before.
I remember that. Okay, but without, just in your head, think about what language it sounded like to you. And then, don't say it out loud.
I'm not.
You got yours?
Mhm.
You got yours, Dad?
I had no idea.
If you had to guess, if you had to take a stab at it, what would you say?
I would have said Egyptian or something like that.
Or something.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought, I thought Latin, and I didn't even really know what Latin
But
was.
he said it in such, he was a kid. It's such a,
very pronounced syllables.
yes, it sounded more like an adult speaking.
Yeah, it was saying stuff with authority,
Yes, he spoke with authority.
like a speech, like, you know. That was pretty frightening.
Yeah, it's frightening to wake up and hear that.
I'm sure.
And we'll never know what he said.
No. It could have been Native American.
I would have imagined, if I could imagine a picture to go with the voice, that it would have been somebody in robes and with a turban on his head with a lot of authority speaking. That's what I would have imagined. You know how you kind of put a voice with, even just regular stuff, you hear somebody's voice and you expect them to look a certain way. You sure don't expect them to look like a little kid laying in the bed.
That's part one of my interview with my parents. Part two is, to me, the most important part because, well, not only was I able to get my phone in a better position to record them speaking, but it's also the most important story from my childhood involving shadow people, because to me, this is what sealed the deal as far as me believing that shadow people exist.
We were invited to go over to some friends' home for a fish fry, mullet. We were frying mullet. And we went over there, I remember, I think it was a Wednesday night, but it doesn't matter what night it was. Anyway, the whole family went and we had our mullet and all that. Well, we went home, of course, and went to bed. And I woke up in the middle of the night with a man and a woman standing by my bed in old-fashioned clothes looking at me, and I screamed. And when I screamed, your dad woke up and he saw a child and a boy in the doorway wearing the old-fashioned nightshirts that kids wore long ago to sleep in. Of course, it was, your daddy flipped on the light, and of course there was nothing there. But we both saw something. Well, anyway, so that morning we went to, we discussed it, and then, it must have been a Saturday night, the fish fry, because we went to over to Mom and Dad's for lunch that day, and we talked about it, and Daddy called them Haints. Those were Haints, he said. Well, anyway, so by come Monday, I had a genealogy history meeting. Went over there and I told my little ghost story, and everybody started talking about ghost and ghost story. So the next day, which was Tuesday, one of the older, she probably wasn't as old as I am now, but one of the older people in the group called me, and she said, I just felt like I needed to tell you that what you saw were the ones that come before. And I said, come before? She said, they come before death in the family. And then on Saturday, Daddy had a heart attack and died on Sunday. And I don't know I feel like it was the ones that came before.
If you've been following this story, I think you're probably as surprised as I am at how closely their stories matched with mine, with a few differences for sure, but the meat of things are very similar, especially for something that happened decades ago. I'm sure I'll record again before I leave this place, but for now, I am wiped out from all the traveling and dealing with her new dog, who weighs a ton and is completely out of control. That dog is a nut job. So I should be getting back to the house. I'll sign off for now with a sincere thank you for listening to my story. It does make me wonder how many people have a story like mine, but just never have the right time or scenario to tell somebody. And that makes me think about making these recordings public, so people know it's okay to talk about these things. And if you saw something, things happen. You know, if you experience something strange, that's okay. It happens. But we'll see. It's tough enough to make these recordings. It's even tougher to imagine another person, even one person, listening to this. But I'm not going to think about that at all, because I don't want to start self-editing. You know, I don't want to change what I would normally say. I just want to be honest and direct. So, all right, it's bedtime around these parts, so I'll leave you for now. So, good night from the Deep South, whoever you are.
You've been listening to A Shock in the Dark, an audio journal of a haunting. For a free subscription to this series, push the subscribe button. To get an alert when the next episode posts, push the bell notification symbol. Post your questions or comments to the narrator in the comment section below. To contribute your recorded or personal story for this series, send it in an email to aSHOCKintheDARK@gmail.com. Until next time, as our narrator says, good night, whoever you are.